Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a guide that may or may not contain some tasteful side boob, otherwise known as a Tarkov video. I'm sure we've all been there, casually going through customs, looting away, trying to find those must-have resources, trying to make a few bucks here or there. Oh, what's that sound? It's the sound of 5 sweaty chads running down the corridor, fully kitted with 2 million ruples worth of M4 each, about to shove the barrel up their gun up your ass. And you wonder, how do I deal with these 5 sweaty chads? Well, Billy, I'm here to tell you. Want to stop getting ganged up by 5-man teams? Want to know how to best engage 4 people who've spent the last 30 minutes of a raid huddled in one room together touching each other's barrels while they wait for that one unlucky player to happen by? Well, then, Billy, this video is here for that, as we take a look at the best ways to kick the ass of teams, or maybe just to handle situations when encountering them in general. This video is going to be split into a couple different parts. One part being focused around the idea of someone who wants to tackle a team and actually engage head-on. The other part will then be based more around alternative measures you can take when encountering a sweaty team and still come out alive. In the background, we're going to have footage from some fellow Tarkov streamers and content creators who have provided some great footage for us to show just the sort of means we're going to be talking about, along with some testimonials of advice that they have provided of things you can look at and think about when you're getting into a team fight. Alright, so to start with, before we actually take a look at the process of dealing with these fat boy slim teams, there's a few things we have to take into consideration before deciding our approach. 1. How many are in the enemy team? 2. How geared are they and what do they have in their arsenal? 3. What do we have in our arsenal, and what do we have that can give us an advantage? 4. We take into consideration the map and the surroundings and what possible benefits that may give us as well. Simply put, you need information to base your decision making on. There's no point running in against an unknown amount of enemies with unknown gear, with unknown size gear, if all you have is a Makarov on a map where there's only one entryway to said team. That math just equals deaths, little Billy. So determining their capabilities by comparison to yours and seeing if the map will be on your side will give you a strategic idea as to how much of an advantage you'll have over them and the possible avenues of approach you will have from therein. Once information has been acquired, if we decide to engage, there's a few things that we can take into consideration, and hopefully make better decision making based on that information. Because as much as we like to think we can champ it out and just hope for the best, unlike 1v1s, going against a team is far more clinical and needs to be treated with a bit more tact and strategy. If you decide you are actually going to take a team on, the first major thing in your advantage is enemy teams are usually a darn sight slower than you. Due to Tarkov's lack of UI and team identifiers, this means a team has to go through several processes when engaging to make sure they don't accidentally shoot one of their own teammates in the arse. Now that's obviously subjective. Some really well-oiled teams can be very efficient. However, even with those well-oiled teams, they still have to fight under the constraints of possible friendly fire and the constraints of voice communication. That intel gives you an opportunity to disrupt said communications. Whereas a solo player, you know you can just act and react on a dime. That is another advantage. You are a sleek, streamlined individual that can make decisions on the fly. A team has to go through processes. There is a delay, if you will, before they do anything. Decision-making and speed are your advantage. Utilizing those to flank and attack from different positions on the fly will be one of your pivotal aspects to winning a team fight. Utilizing those to disrupt and break apart your enemy is one of your best bets when it comes to fighting a team head-on. Being on the move and having the ability to flank and outmaneuver your opponent is pivotal. Your goal in this situation is to confuse your enemy, cause them to be constantly guessing, and hope your constant movement and attacking from different positions will cause their added level of decision-making and general communication to break down, to then abuse the confusion to pick away at the team over time. A team's biggest strength, of course, is their numbers. But if there's a communication breakdown, those team members essentially become solo players. And to compound that, well, I can't tell you the amount of teams I've won out on because they've gotten confused and accidentally shot each other instead. So, to be fair, what you have to take into consideration is maybe not taking a team head on, but finding ways to pick away at them, finding ways to get between them. And if that means you have to maybe take a step back and take unconventional means to do so, then always take that into consideration. On top of that, always take the situation in hand when encountering a team. It might not always be the best bet to engage them at that given time. Take, for example, if a team is held up in a room together and they're looting away. In that small enclosed room they're looting, they have security. They have sight on most possible entrances. Again, situationally speaking, of course. Once again, their weakness is when they are on the move. When they're on the move, there's going to be more cogs, there's going to be more processes to go through, and there's going to be more opportunities for you to take them out with. So if you find a team, but they're dug in somewhere, you really want to take them, and you really want to take them on, a good way to pick them apart is to pull back and go and do something else while they transition between different locations. At the end of the day, a team is not that hard to lose, and you can stay hidden and repositioned to a spot at any given time, because a team is, when made up of multiple people, a very large blot on a map. And you can usually hear them stampeding from a mile away. So always take into mind where they are, go and do something else, and then come back when they may be on the move again, whilst also maintaining your composure and your distance. In the background, we have plenty of examples of team fights going on, and you'll see by the process they go through that a lot of what we've mentioned goes on through the process of engaging a team. So in scenarios like this, we are assuming that you have some kind of gear and supplies to actually engage with. Decent ammo, grenades, okay armor, and the like. But what if you don't have much gear? Or maybe you're on your scav and you run into a team. Well, in low gear scenarios, you still have the ability of tackling teams, but you have to realize that more gear equates to higher probability of success, and more opportunities to disrupt the enemy and utilities to rely on. So let's take a look at some general semantics of team engagement that can be applied at any level. And of course, the less gear you have, the more you'll need to pay attention to this. Gear just allows you to have more room for error when engaging a team, and that at any given time, the less gear you have, the more reliant on the disruption mechanics we're about to mention you'll have to be. Rule 1 of engaging a team: assess. Based on the sort of information we talked about earlier, assess the level of gear and numbers. Determine how much of a threat each of the enemies are going to be to you, and what priority order you may need to give in terms of the order of enemies you take out. Then also take into consideration their location in relation to you. Some enemies may be more exposed than others, some may be more secured. We have to take into consideration every possible avenue when engaging a team. Engage. Based on your assessment, try to focus on the lowest geared enemy first, always trying to be opportunistic as well. If the enemy have recently engaged some other players or are in a recovery spot after a previous engagement, the initial engagement is always going to be the most important. Even if you kill a player, lead yourself into the next step. Always go through the processes, never stay still. An engagement must be done on your terms. If you control the flow of a fight, you are in control. You will have the upper hand in most situations. And if we break down a fight into the individual components of each individual player, we are able to manage ourselves much better in these scenarios. So the engagement is the core aspect here. Learn the engagement. If you're able to learn the engagement, the other steps fall in line with it. After an engagement, the next step is repositioning. Repositioning is key. The longer the fight goes on, the more you'll need to reposition or find a new avenue to engage from. Trying to keep the enemy guessing and trying to engage enemies in a one-on-one rather than a 1v4 is pivotal. Keep their guns having to retrain your location. Keep their guns being on the move. If you have to move even further away, like existentially far away, to pull them apart from each other, do so. A 1v multiple engagement is not the same as a 1v1. A 1v1 can be quite static. In a 1v many, you have to be able to pull them apart. You have to tug the enemies away from each other so they don't have that strength in numbers, as we mentioned earlier. And the final and most important aspect to realize in a team engagement is retreat. If you feel like everything is against you, even before the engagement, run. You can always wait for them to move and re-engage later, once they've changed position or aren't ready for you. At the end of the day, a team's biggest strength in numbers is also their weakness. A team is going to be so obvious in a map that you will not be their only threat. A team is exposed on multiple fronts and will give you many more opportunities to engage with. But at any given point, do not be afraid to run. Engaging a team is not mandatory, and at the end of the day, you're better off getting out with your gear and surviving than going against a team where there is literally no chance of winning. Do not be afraid of running. At the end of the day, there is no one key to success. But one of the pivotal elements to this, to help you with success, is practice. Fighting teams is very unique and a very unique skill to acquire, and can only be trained for by actually getting in and fighting teams. However, one thing that can train for the hecticness is running offline mode in Horde mode. This is an option you have when signing up to a game that will allow you to fight above the average amount of NPCs you would normally go against in that map. My recommendation would be Factory, as it gives you a closed encountered area where you'll be fighting many enemies in a given point. It won't give you a good representation of enemy reaction times or realistic player reactions, but it'll give you a good idea as to how to deal with multiple targets all over the place at once, and in my eyes is also a very good way to warm up when you first start playing in a day. But let's face it, the biggest aspect here is to accept the reality that most people cannot take teams, or will die if they do, due to the skill difference. When you see these amazing videos online of professional Tarkov players soloing teams, you have to realize that that one video you see of them demonstrating a team kill is likely one of many videos where the rest of the videos are them dying miserably every time, and where what they did against that one team actually working is a rare instance. And really, only a small percentage of us can naturally handle situations like this with any consistency. And with that, we have to set our expectations in the reality that most of the time, we are just simply not going to be able to win versus a team. Just because the pros can do this doesn't mean you can. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. There is always the possibility of learning, improving, and improvising when you want to try and beat a team. And when you are against a team, improvising will be your best friend when it comes to Tarkov as a whole. Team fights are one of those things that there is no set chemistry for. There's no guaranteed mode for success. But hopefully with some of these bits of advice, it'll help you set yourself up for some of that success. And realistically, keep in mind that when you want to learn how to fight teams, you just have to get in there and try. The more you get in, the more you fight, the more it'll become natural for you to actually pick apart teams and learn the processes of actually taking them on. So hopefully this video has been of some sort of advice for you or some sort of use for you. Hopefully the comments from our fellow Tarkov creators have been of use as well. I'll make sure to have a link to all of our fellow content creators down below so you can go and check them out as well, as I do advise doing so. They're all amazing people. And if you feel like coming and watching me, we do record these videos on stream, as well as also getting you involved with the creation of them. So if you want to join them, they'll be linked to my Twitch and Twitter down below. So please pop them a follow if you get the chance to. And I will hopefully see all of you top hatters in the next video. Ta-ra!